that's the major driver. The North Korean threat is the major driver. But at the same time, the 2022 national security strategy included first time that Japan will have the counter-strike capabilities, which means that this is the first time that the Japanese weapon system goes outside of its jurisdiction and its territory, and to attack somebody, the outside of the country.
Hello, welcome to the Space Policy Show. I'm Colleen Stover with the Aerospace Corporation. Our next installment of the series on resilience is the perspective of Japan. Well, actually, from Japan. Actually recorded there on location. We look at the regional security in the Asia-Pacific region, or APAC. I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Kazuto Suzuki, a leading thinker specializing in space policy and non-proliferation. He's professor of science and technology at the University of Tokyo and director and lead of economic security at the Institute for Geoeconomics. It's a think tank concentrating on the Asia-Pacific region. He sat down with Sam Wilson, systems director from the Center for Space Policy and Strategy, while he was in Tokyo. Things they talked about: how has history and the Diet, Japan's National Congress, shaped the country's use of space for security purposes over the years? How are Japanese space capabilities crucial to regional security? And what does the future look like for partnership and cooperation with the United States? Let's get started. We'll go over to Sam.
Professor Suzuki, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a huge honor to have you on the program. You've been a crucial figure in Japan's space activities for decades. And it's also just an exciting time for Japan and space. I saw this week that Euroconsult reported that Japan now has the third highest national space budget in the world. And then from 2020 to 2023, in US dollars, that budget has increased by 40%. So my first question for you is, what's driving this increase? Why is there so much emphasis in Japan on space?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and it is a very interesting time for looking at the Japanese space activities, the government space as well as the private space activities. But the Japanese space budget, as you said, is increasing not just 40%, it's the regular budget, but on top of that, there is strategic funding, which is allocated about to 1/3 of the entire budget. So it is, in a Japanese yen term, it's the Japanese space budget was about the $300 billion yen for many years, and almost the last two decades it was very constant. But in the last 2 years there was a sharp increase of the space budget, and now the regular budget is about the 500 billion yen. And then on top of that, there is a strategic funding which is dedicated for the development of new technology, particularly aiming at dual-use purposes. And this is the 300 billion yen. So altogether, it's about 800 billion yen. And then it may increase because there will be a supplementary budget afterwards. So the amount of the coming from the 300 to the 800, 900 billion is a sharp increase of the budget, and there are a couple of reasons for that. There is a significant change in the recognition of the importance of space in security field. So in 2022, December 2022, there was we issued the National Security Strategy, and this is the first time that the space has been integrated in the security strategy document. although this is not the first time that space appeared in this security document, but that was the time in 2013 that it was only mentioned about SSA capabilities. But now, the 2022, there are inclusion of the having a constellation for the targeting, and another constellation for the tracking the hypersonic gliding vehicles, and also there are inclusion of the SDA space domain awareness satellites, and so on and so forth. So there are a number of proposals coming from the security side to invest in space. So that's one reason. The second reason is the space becomes a strategic domain, strategic industry. So in order to foster the strategic industry, we need to encourage the Japanese space industry to invest more in the new technology, more resilient in the supply chain, maintaining the autonomous capabilities of building the satellite and operating the satellite. So this is another reason why the space budget is increasing. The third reason is that there is encouragement for the government to encourage encouragement of the government to foster the private space industry. Unlike United States, Japanese there is a very limited capacity for the venture capital in Japan. So if you want to encourage the people to go into startups and start new businesses in space, it is the government who provides funding for the private businesses. So government is playing as the venture capital role in fostering the space industry, private space startups. So there are a number of different kinds of initiatives, such as S-Booster, the idea, which is the idea contest, or to secure certain funding for the collaborative work between JAXA and the private companies. For example, the JAXA and iSpace, which is the moon exploration or moon landing services, providing a moon landing services by the private companies. The JAXA and the iSpace are working together. Astroscale, which is the debris removal company, is now working together with JAXA. Now they are operating one satellite in orbit, and another one will be launched. So there are a number of issues that JAXA plays as the sort of an anchor customer or anchor tenancy for the private companies, and purchasing the services from the private industry. So these are the reasons why the budget is increasing, and also there is a sort of a encouragement by the public to invest more in, let's say, large scale program like Artemis program, or Japanese. I mean, now the H3 is available, and there is a new, the launcher. Yeah, H3 launcher is available. There was a success of the third launch. So.
And I enjoyed your panel yesterday about this.
Wow! Good for you. Yeah. So everyone's happy with that, and there's an expectation that more to come by, first initially launching many government satellites, so that there'll be more experiences and improving the reliability of the launcher, and then hopefully the H3 goes into a commercial market.
Right. No, thank you. That's a really helpful overview. And I would just note that, the three issues that you pointed out are precisely some of the big issues that the United States is grappling with, right? Mm-hmm. Like thinking about more emphasis on military space activities, thinking about resilient systems, not just in terms of satellites, but in thinking about all the processes and capabilities that go into that. And then obviously this huge push towards using commercial systems, as well as kind of, debates about what should the government's role be with markets that aren't as mature, where the government may need to serve as anchor tenant or may need to help provide some continued investment with some of these areas. So again, a fascinating set of issues, and again, mirroring with what's happening in the United States. I want to pull on the first one, on the military and security angle of this, because you've obviously been a pivotal figure in all of Japan's space activities, but particularly on the security side. I think there's been this misperception for a long time that up until recently, Japan didn't engage in military space activities. Right. And you've written some really great papers trying to dispute this. And so I just ask you if you could walk us through the actual history of how Japan has used space for military purposes and what have been the core developments.
Right. Well, it's a long history, but try to make it short. From the beginning, after the World War II, the Japanese aerospace industry were basically terminated because, it was the sort of warfighting capabilities, and, the occupying forces, mainly the American forces, were just suppressed the aerospace industry as a whole. So aerospace industry was demonized in a sense that it was a part of the collaborators of the war. And when Japan engaged in space activities in 1960s, there was a Diet resolution. Diet is a parliament, Congress in Japan. The Diet resolution saying that the space should space should be done exclusively for the peaceful purposes. So exclusively peaceful purposes. It is written in the ESA Charter or the Outer Space Treaty, but in Japan it is interpreted as anything, the development, ownership of the space assets, the operation of space assets, or even use of space assets were not allowed by the Ministry of Defense or Self-Defense Force. So even the weather forecast or satellite communication were not available for any activities of Ministry of Defense or the Self-Defense Force. It is largely because in Japan the space was considered as equivalent to the nuclear technology. So nuclear civilian use is for the electricity, etc., but the military use, it's a bomb, right? So there was a sort of a general understanding that space is all about the missiles, rockets, and the Ministry of Defense shall not engage in space or use it as a missile. So that was the original idea. But gradually, because of the evolution of the technology and using space for any military operation is now being so common. Then 1985 there was a change of the interpretation of the exclusively peaceful purpose as from entirely excluding Ministry of Defense from space to allow the use of space as long as it's commercially available. So the commercially available services like weather forecast or the telecommunication, it is available, or imagery. But that was the time that the commercial imagery was not really the big market in 1980s. It was probably only available the Landsat images, but they can use the Landsat images, but it was entirely very limited use for the military purposes. So there was a change in 1985, but that was only for the use, commercial available services. And until 2008, this situation continued. So Japanese self-defense force are basically constructed without thinking of using space. So space was totally out of sight of our military build-up and operational exercises. So in 2008, there was a new law called the Basic Space Law, which changes the entire relationship between the military and space. So the Basic Space Law defines that the objective of space is, among other things, for serving the security of our country and the international peace and security. So the Japanese space activities are related first time with the security activities. So, but the self-defense force was so isolated, or from space. So there is no technical capabilities of using space or understanding the value of using space. So it take a while to build up the knowledge. First, the Ministry of Defense started to engage in the SSA, because there was a network of the military to military intelligence sharing framework, so that there was an let's say request from the United States that it should be the Ministry of Defense instead of JAXA to do the SSA. So the Ministry of Defense accepted the role of being as a Japanese outpost of the SSA capabilities. So there's a new radar which is operational since 2023 in Yamaguchi Prefecture. So that's the first engagement in space. But until recently, the Ministry of Defense had very limited competence in space. There are very few people who understand the technologies and the values. But increasingly, because of the changing nature of the weapon systems, all the weapon system requires some sort of space services like GPS or communication, and also there are intelligence activities. So this is why the National Security Strategy document in December 2022 included space for the first time in the serious portion of investigating space.
Yeah, it was a big point of emphasis.
Yes. So it takes a long time, since 1969 to 2022. Japan was almost absent in the military space field, but now Japan is first time getting into this domain and starting to be a player to provide services not only for Japan but also for the allies and the like-minded countries, to the space capabilities and the space-based services to those forces.
Thank you, Professor Suzuki. And there's such the documents that you're referring to include these pretty serious ambitions for space, and I just, what, from your perspective, are some of the core issues or challenges that Japanese space leadership is going to have to sort through, going to have to grapple with to actually expand the space program along the lines of what you've discussed, of what they want?
Well, we are living in a very rough neighborhood. I mean, we have Russia on the north, North Korea, and China. So there's, the Japan is geopolitically located in a very tough places. We need to know what is up to, and especially the immediate challenge is coming from North Korea because of its, military build-up, the missile capabilities, nuclear capabilities, and its association with Russia, which may lead to more technical advances in the missiles and the nuclear technologies. So there is, and very uncertain, a lot of uncertainty about decision making in North Korea. So that's the first immediate threat, and one of the major threat is that they are having the hypersonic gliding vehicle. Yes, we have prepared for the missile defense for the ballistic missiles, but the hypersonic gliders are totally different ballgame. You need to have the capabilities of finding and tracking the missiles for shoot it down. So that's the major driver. The North Korean threat is the major driver. But at the same time, the 2022 National Security Strategy included first time that Japan will have the counter-strike capabilities, which means that this is the first time that the Japanese weapon system goes outside of its jurisdiction and its territory, and to attack somebody, the outside of the country. So in terms of intelligence, the self-defense force was, as it says, it's a self-defense. So basically the idea is that self-defense force is to defend our territory no matter who came or what came from outside. And there was there was considered as not constitutional. Well, not exactly in a legal term, but there was a general understanding in Japan that attacking on the foreign soil is considered to be unconstitutional. So for many years it wasn't. Japan has not prepared to attack the target outside. So that means we don't need to do the targeting, intelligence gathering of the targets outside of the territory. So we didn't need to have, let's say, the reconnaissance satellite or the satellite to identify the movement outside. I mean, there are intelligence satellite called information gathering satellite, but these are more strategic information gathering rather than the tactical operational intelligence gathering. So we need to have some operational intelligence gathering for the sake of using the counter-strike capabilities. So that is the first time that the Japanese defense authorities consider that it is important to have the space-based reconnaissance capabilities for, and of course it's a tactical ones. So it should be based on the constellation. We haven't really decided the design yet, but it will be more satellite like 50 or 100 or 200, I don't know, but there'll be a more revisiting time and to make sure that we understand who are which are the targets that we need to strike when we are. Counter-strike means that when we are attacked, then we counter-strike. So when we are attacked, then which target we should aim at and how to assess the damages. We need the space-based capabilities. So that was a sort of a driving force, of the changes of the security environment around Japan. And of course, there's another threat or the concerns is the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan is just 100 kilometers away from the south edge of Japan, so it is serious. If there is a Taiwan contingency, then there will be we cannot be. We cannot escape from that. I mean, we will be respond to it, and we need to be prepared. We need to know, what's going on. And if United States engaged in this contingency, then there'll be, the U.S. forces using the U.S. base in Japan. So we are basically engaged in this conflict. So we need to change our mindset from the pacifist country, having this very self-imposed restrictions of the military activities, and try to be more prepared with the technologies and the assets capabilities to, while maintaining the constitution and the constitutional framework, but do as much as we can to protect ourselves.
Yeah, navigate that through line. No, that'll be that's really, really important. My last question for you, and I'm gonna. There's two parts to this, but what to you does success look like for Japan's space security activities 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and what does success look like for the U.S.-Japan partnership for space security activities?
Right. Well, I think these two questions are integrated into one, because Japan cannot achieve its security only by ourselves. I think the alliance with the United States is the utmost significant alliance for Japan's and Japanese defense. One of the reasons why Japan were able to restrict itself by not, by limiting ourselves to the self-defense was basically alliance. I mean, the United States is considered to be the tip of spear, and we are the shield. So this combination of the United States, the U.S. forces and the U.S. capabilities, together with the Japanese capabilities, will create a certain deterrence capabilities against Russia, China, or North Korea. So this framework hasn't changed, even though Japan has a counter-strike capabilities. But still, we depend on the U.S. Capabilities for retaliating if there is an attack. So I think the integration of the the military operation between the United States and Japan through the structuring the space assets is the ultimate goal. So we work together with the United States Space Forces to let's say the first time that the U.S. force will has a payload on the Japanese satellite.
Right, QZSS.
QZSS.
Right.
So the hosted payload is it's not just symbolic, but also it creates the enhances the sort of effective use of our civilian and military assets, and to expand our capabilities altogether. So that's the integration of the space-based capabilities, and I think this is extremely important for the Japanese defense and the Japanese to create a security environment in East Asia, because that is not only enhancing the joint capability between the United States and Japan, but also it will demonstrate that there is an ironclad relationship between the United States and Japan, and sharing the basic infrastructure in space is primarily the message sent out to the adversaries that United States is committed to protecting Japan, because without Japan, U.S. forces will not be able to function the assets in space. So I think that is the ultimate objective of what we are doing. The hosted payload is just one step further for the further integration of the space systems, but SSA is another, and probably in the future we do more intelligence sharing, since we have the one of the reasons why we have the new security clearance system is to make sure that the commercial, private, governmental, military intelligence can be shared. Space-based intelligence can be shared between the United States and Japan, and those who are providing those, the commercial imageries will have the security clearance, so that they would have this sort of they would access to the pools of imagery intelligence from together with Japan and the United States. So this is another kind of the integration of the infrastructure this is an intelligence infrastructure, but I think this is also another things that we need to do. So there are many ways that Japan and the United States work together, and that is the main goals of the Japanese space security programs. And of course, we need to build up our own capabilities for our own autonomous capabilities. But we all know that there is a huge gap between the Japanese military capabilities and the Chinese one. So we need to use all means possible to make sure that we send the right message to China.
Great, thank you. I will just foot stomp that. One of the reasons why the Center for Space Policy and Strategy, is so interested in Japan, and as well as Aerospace Corporation broadly, is not just because Japan's in this moment of intensified interest in space and expansion in space, but just also because the geopolitical importance of our relationship is that's really the main driver for this. Yes. Is that the U.S. and Japan have been so well integrated, and I think something that's encouraging is the Department of Defense is really interested in signaling that they want our close allies and partners to develop their space capabilities and us to partner and think about how to do interoperability and integration with those capabilities. So
I think the United States and Japan is perhaps the most advanced model of that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Professor Suzuki, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
I would also just note that anything that Professor Suzuki writes, you should read. There's no better author on Japan, what's happening within Japan about space than Professor Suzuki, and that's been the case for decades. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to Dr. Suzuki for taking the time to participate in our show, one in a series on resilience for space. And Sam did a great job kind of teasing out some of those issues around Japan's space security. Now, while Sam was in Tokyo, he also caught up with Kota Umeda, a research fellow at the Institute for Geoeconomics, and a co-author with Sam on a recent article on space-based missile warning. It was published in the National Bureau of Asian Research. Here's a clip of their conversation with some thoughts on Japan's missile warning outlook and on how hypersonic glide vehicles, or HGVs, are really kind of game changers for regional and global security.
Okay, so for our second part of the episode, we have Kota Umeda. Kota, in addition to being a great friend, you and I also wrote a paper this year about a potential U.S.-Japanese collaboration on missile warning. So I want to pull on that, kind of following from Professor Suzuki's comments. When did you first see this interest in missile warning, and kind of what spurred it?
Yeah, so that's in early we can trace the history, but one of the obvious an event was happened in the early 1990s.
Right.
When the North Korea launches the short-range ballistic missiles into the Sea of Japan in the early 90s, and the one of the most historical moments for Japan was in 1998 when the North Korea launched so-called Tepodon 2 ballistic missiles that flew over Japan. That was really how do you say?
That was a crucial moment.
Yeah, that gave a shock to all Japanese people. Not only politicians, but the people, just in general, people saw that the news on the TV and what happened, and it was kind of a shocking moment, and that's the one of the reason that at the time Japanese government introduced the so-called IGS information gathering satellite, but at that time it was not enough push for the space-based early warning satellite, because that was the information gathering satellite is the advertised as multiple use satellite. That means to monitor like a disaster or something like that. So it still could be interpreted as the civilian satellite somehow.
Right.
But missile warning satellite, it's purely military. We can't say that it's civilian. But so but the missile launch from North Korea was really the driver behind the Japan's interest in the missile warning satellite.
You talked about some of the historical interest. Why now? What has spurred Japan to want to do this now?
So maybe there are three main reasons. One is as Professor Suzuki mentioned, that in 2008 the basic space law was enacted that allows Japanese Ministry of Defense and the self-defense forces to use the space capability for military purposes. That's one. That's simple one. The second one is also the security environment surrounding Japan has changed. The surrounding country, the country surrounding Japan, especially China and North Korea, has increased the ballistic missile capabilities, and also they deployed a lot of missiles, and also they are developing, or they have developed the new type of missiles, including hypersonic gliders or HCB, and as Professor Suzuki mentioned, that the current missile defense system is not designed to hit the intercept the HCBs. So that's the HCB could to fly through the atmosphere, edge of the Earth's atmosphere, so that they can change direction and they can maneuver during the flight. So during the tracking capability through the entire flight of the HCB it's extremely important. So without space-based sensors, it's extremely hard to do that.
Right.
And the third reason is the change in the missile detection and tracking capability or technologies. So traditionally the missile warning satellite is the huge and very expensive the single-made satellite that costs a lot, and even the U.S. the Air Force in the old days, and now Space Force has if they have a series of the missile warning satellite, but usually their development delays and cost overruns, and so it's still for them it's very difficult to develop that's very expensive satellite. So only the United States, Russia, and potentially China operates those missile warning satellite. So that's really challenging for other country to get in that business. But that's also changing. The U.S. Space Force, or more specifically the Space Development Agency within the Space Force, is now fielding and deploying the large number of small satellites in low Earth orbit to track and to detect and track the ballistic missiles. And the satellite, the small satellite they are fielding is way cheaper. The small satellite itself, it's way cheaper than that of the traditional one. And the technical risk to develop is, of course, the way smaller in when you look at just single satellites. So that's the change in the architecture of the missile tracking and detection made a middle country like Japan possible to consider developing those the small small satellite constellation for the low Earth orbit to for the missile warning and tracking. and for Japan, the technical risk for getting into that business will be much smaller, so it's easier for the Japanese government to to consider that. So that's those are the reasons behind the recent Japan's interest in the missile warning.
What are the options for Japan as it's considering trying to pursue space-based missile warning?
Yeah, there are many options, but I think there are mainly three options. And the first option is, especially from Japan's perspective, is of course to develop small missile, the warning satellites by their own. I mean, by Japan itself. That's a very natural way of thinking. But the issue of this, this option would be, of course, Japan does not have any experience of developing a missile warning satellite in the past. We have done some research and development on sensors, and we are still doing that. But still, the developing the architecture and also the making it to the operational by Japan itself is a huge challenge. And considering the threat nature, the changing the threat nature in Japan, I mean, surrounding Japan, we can't take too long to the field or deploy those capabilities. So this option is somehow traditionally ideal maybe, but still it has a lot of the risk and the time. So this may be not ideal one, but so on the other hand, the second option would be to buy the missile warning satellite and sensors from the United States.
Right.
Of course, that's the natural option.
Like the WGS model.
WGS, yes.
Yeah.
WGS is wideband global satellite.
Right.
The U.S. allies like Australia and other countries participate in that by paying for some portion of the usage of the the satellite communication, that's military satellite communications. So that's one option, but there's still for the second option is buying those the early warning satellite sensors, but and this option could of course reduce the risk of the technical development because the U.S. has already already somehow developed and deploying the satellite, and also considering the operations, the actual missile detection and tracking operations. Japan cannot or will not operate those the missile warning do not operate the missile defense system by not alone, but we operate together actually. Japan and the United States operate ballistic missile defense system together, and actually now Japan receives the early warning satellite data from the United States that is called the shared early warning systems. So the buying satellite and sensors from the US could mean that those data could be easily be operationalized in Japan as well. But the issue with this the option would be how much we can depend on the United States. I mean, Japan wants to depend on the United States, and one of the interest in the reason why Japan or especially some politicians were interested in the having missile warning capability is somehow Japan wants to have the autonomy, the independent capability to defend Japan itself, because when in the event of conflict or any event, it's ultimately Japan's the responsibility to defend ourselves. Of course, we need to cooperate with the United States. That's for sure. But we also need some independence, some capabilities, because we are sovereign country and we need to have, it's our, responsibility to define our destiny. So this option, just buying the satellite from the US, that's not really satisfy the political, how do you say, the
political push.
Yeah,
Right,
in Japan. So that's still difficult to pursue this option. So the third option would be the middle ground between the first and second, of course. So Japan could develop their our own satellite, and the sensors, the United States could provide sensors to the satellite, so that the Japan has own somehow can have experience in developing the missile detection tracking satellite. In the same time, mitigating the risk of the development and the cost over the time overrun. And at the same time, so by receiving the sensors from the United States, it's gonna be easier to integrate data from Japanese missile warning satellite to the United States, so that we can have that common operationalized system for the ballistic missile defense systems. So our paper, we advocated this third option, and I still think that this is the most feasible and reasonable way to go forward.
Yeah. I mean, you and I have talked a lot about this, and yeah, I mean, I feel like the way you laid it out, it was kind of like Goldilocks, right? Like the first option is too hard, right? Second option, not enough independence. Third option is just kind of middle road that's just perfect. I think, and I also just think this shift in the United States toward proliferated systems should just create more opportunity for really, for partnerships with our close allies. So I do think this is really good.
Well, thank you to Coda and Sam for taking the time to record their conversation. Remember, if you want to read more about their research, you can look for their recent article on Asia policy, or of course you can follow CSPS on LinkedIn, and we're actually going to have a full Q&A transcript of their conversation. That'll be posted soon. Thank you to our audience. This episode is part of a series of shows around the idea of resilience. Some other topics include a look at alliances from the perspective of Australia, as well as Resilient Launch from the CEO of United Launch Alliance. These and all the shows are available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. And of course, our more in-depth research papers on policy and strategy around space can be found on our website, csps.aerospace.org. There you can join the mailing list and you get instantly notified for new shows and research as it's made available. Thank you to James Liggins, our technical director. Bye for now.